Hey, we're on here. Happy December, everybody. It's December 1st. We're about to do a development task check-in meeting for Backdrop CMS. To start off the meeting, I just wanted to make an announcement that I have requested from the PHP Storm folks. Our set of licenses that we hand out to contrib developers expire every year, so I have submitted a new application to get either those like the license rollover date to be pushed out another year, I guess. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but they wanted me to resubmit the application and I did it. We'll see where it leads. Infrastructure stuff, we're making a bunch of changes to backdropcms.org. Most importantly, first on the list, maybe not most importantly, we have built a new content type for showcases. We're trying to set up a view where people can actually see them. We have designs, we haven't built the view. We've built a view, but it's not the view. It still needs some work. And I also think we should do some work on the content type as well to make sure we're asking people the right questions to get the right kind of content so that we get some compelling stories about why you chose Backdrop and what is the site actually doing for you, rather than just here's a pretty picture of my website, which is good, but it would be good if we could actually get those stories in there too. So right before this call, I was looking at the Blue Drop Awards, which is a website that was made specifically to generate content for Drupal's showcase section, to see how they phrase the questions to try and get compelling answers from people and compelling content for people who are submitting sites for the contest. So hopefully I'll get some insights from there and we'll be able to figure out how to get some better content. But for now, we need a view. The documentation on backdropcms.org is also something we've been working on. I think it's ready to go. We just have this problem of where to put a link to it, where originally that should be we thought that should be a sub link of the support section, but we don't currently have a way to add sub links to any section other than the handbook. So I thought for now, just to get this item off of our list, we would create a new top level link called documentation. And then we are working on a redesign of backdropcms.org that'll include a menu that'll be our fancy drop down menu that's in core. And then we can reorganize the menu to put all of the links where they're supposed to be when that redesign happens. So I know we already have too many links in our top menu right now, but I think it would be better to have a link to documentation than no link to documentation, knowing that we're going to fix that problem in the near future. Does anyone have any objections to just putting that link in the top level for now? Okay, I'll do that after this meeting, or whoever can do it whenever. But yeah, I would love to just get that off the to-do list since it's mostly done. And then other things we are working on, the homepage redesign. You guys might have seen Wes's designs as of late. I know last week, was it last week? The week before, Wes, you did a walkthrough of what your design would look like. I'm not sure if anyone's got to see that design yet. I think it looks fantastic. It's going to be a huge improvement on what we have now, which is something people have been clamoring for a while. And Wes started implementation this week. So I'm not sure when that'll be done. I think in a perfect world, if we can have that done by January 15th, so it would kind of coincide with the release of 1.6, that would be great, but we'll see what kind of roadblocks we hit once we start working on it. Hopefully that's realistic. And then next on the list is the forum module. So as soon as we get these showcase and homepage rebranding done, those were kind of marketing efforts, the documentation done, that's for existing users. The forum, I think, is also something that existing users are going to benefit a lot from, having a nice, safe place to talk to each other about Backdrop. It was something that was really useful in the early days of Drupal, and something people have been clamoring for. So I would love to see that get done too. I know we've got a port of the forum module and a bunch of interesting work going on there. So I'd like to take a look at that issue again soon. And that's it for backdropcms.org. Does anyone have anything they want to add? No, okay, let's move on to Backdrop, the project, because we are needing to work on it. Okay. Quick Sketch, do you want to take this over?
Yeah, I've been a little bit out of it for the past couple of weeks, so might not be the best on some of these, but I'll do what I can. Okay, so the next bug fix release is 153, and we have a tag, of course, on GitHub that lists all of the 153 issues. There are a couple of issues that we would like to focus on, and if we can complete them, then we will make 153 and then push all the existing issues to 154. One of which has been an issue since 1.5 came out, and that is the full bleed hero in Basis. I think we've reached agreement as to how we will go about that. But I don't think, yeah, there hasn't actually been much activity on that issue since all the way back in October. I think that we need to revise the current pull request even. I think the one that's closest to the one that we're approving is Jen, I think is yours, but I don't think it's been finalized. Anyway, so no real activity on that one. That's issue 2190 for fixing the hero image in Basis. The recommended solution there is that we will override the homepage single column layout. So really that means override the single column layouts only and not any of the other layouts. So that actually would apply to more than just the homepage, but the homepage by default would be using it. An issue that has come up recently, at the beginning of the month, we found out that Backdrop, the installer seems to be broken when installing in other languages. It's unclear when this originally broke. It's issue 2329. I know that we've had Backdrop install in other languages previously. I'm guessing that it may have been a 1.5 issue that may have introduced it. And my complaint in that issue, we actually already have a working solution, I believe, but my complaint in that issue is that we should have more testing on that. But I realized, as I think others have, that we are unable to test the installer currently because Simple Test skips the installation, or it doesn't use the normal installer, especially not install.php to do the installation. So that's an area where we should, in the meantime, we may just need local individual testing on that, just with people testing it out and making sure that it works. And again, because even our live sandboxes skip the installation, that requires actual manual testing on people actually downloading the pull request and trying it out. Not ideal, but I think for the sake of fixing this bug, like testing the installer is a much larger problem than fixing this particular issue. That's issue 2329. Okay, that's it for 1.5 and the minor things that we're fixing here and there. For 1.6, the next minor release will be coming out January 15th, 2017. That's a month and a half away. And we have a feature freeze coming up January 1st. So we have 1 month to push forward as much as we can on all of these issues that we have slated for 1.6. The first of which is reference module. Reference module has been making some progress. Jeff mentioned before this call that he has started building out simple tests to actually test the reference module capabilities, but that involves some rewriting or fixing of some things in reference module itself, which actually is probably a really good thing. We also still have the question of upgrade paths, and in particular, an upgrade path from term reference module. The upgrade paths from the contrib versions of these modules may continue to live in contrib, at least initially, but depending on what we decide to do with term reference, because that is a core module, currently making that an upgrade path that is supported in core would be preferable.
I did volunteer on that issue to start working on an upgrade path from term reference around the 15th, which is when I think my regular workload will lighten up. Because I ran into a similar issue when I was porting NodeQ this week, where people had filed requests against like a feature request that somebody had implemented one way but not another way. So having like two APIs for like term reference versus entity reference means there's twice as much work for contributor to support a single feature. And not only is it harder on contrib that way, but it's also harder on existing users. Like, how do you know when you should use a term reference field versus an entity reference field? So I think if there's a way we can identify the things that are like, what are the blockers that are preventing us from this being one thing, and see if there are workable solutions for making them the best possible solution for decreasing the burden on contrib developers and the user experience on people, is to get that to be one way to solve this problem. And so I wanted to take a look at that kind of before then and say, these are the things we need, whether it's another widget or, you know, whatever it is that's difference between the two, and work on writing an upgrade path to make it only one.
Interesting. Are you imagining that will be an automatic thing? Like as you switch to 1.5, that term reference will stop, or 1.6 term reference will cease to be enabled? Or even exist, possibly?
Yeah. So the trick is that it has to not change anything, right? Like any existing site needs to continue functioning in exactly the way it did before. But I think that that's possible. I don't think there's any reason that a term reference field couldn't be an entity reference field, as long as it had the existing widget, the existing configurations all still in place. So I want to go through and look at exactly what those differences are, because I haven't gotten super intimate with the new reference solution. And see what it looks like to get from one to the other, and if we can still get the same exact thing after the upgrade path.
Yeah, that would be quite an achievement.
I mean, in theory, it seems like it's not a big deal, but I feel like once you start looking at the code, it's going to become a much bigger deal. So,
right, yeah, even just the data model, I'm afraid, would be really difficult to replicate.
But the data model is just an update. That's like any other upgrade, right? You just find the term field and update it to the new model.
I'm saying like in the node object, the properties that say these are the terms, that structure will change with reference module, and thus it will break all modules that are currently using taxonomy terms, because they're looking in the node object in a particular location for the term information. And if that moves,
it's just a field.
I know it's just a field, but the field structure will change.
I don't know. I don't think it'll be that tricky, because we could just add another property in there that is like a backwards compatible container for the same thing. Like it used to be like TID was the key, and now it'll be like entity_ID. But if we added a TID also, I don't know. I want to look at it and see, because I feel like the harm that can be done by leaving it is too great to not carefully consider it.
Okay. Yeah, my thought process had been that we would disable it on new sites and make it a hidden module, a la profile module.
But it's not a module.
Term reference, I mean. Term reference is module.
It's not a module. It's part of taxonomy.
Oh.
Yeah.
I see.
It's more complicated.
But we could separate it out and then disable it.
Maybe. I want to look at it.
Okay.
We'll I might forget.
Okay. Some other issues that, so that is issue 1301. There's actually not a lot of activity in that issue itself, because most of the activity is in the contrib repository, and you can find that at github.com/backdrop-contrib/reference. Okay, next issue is issue 315, which is adding entity view modes to core, making it so that you can add your own view modes a la display suite without needing to install any other modules. It looks like this has a pull request, which I haven't had a chance to take a look at. Oh, it's Doc Wilmot pull request, which is always encouraging. That's been up for about 2 weeks. Tests aren't passing, but it could use some review.
Yeah, he pinged us on Gitter. He wants us to take a look at that, and if we're happy with the direction of it, he wants to start working on tests. But understandably, he wants to have some confidence that he's testing the code that's going to be appropriate.
Yeah. Huh. Interestingly, it looks like I actually started a review, but I didn't hit the finish your review button. Well, I'll try to finish that. Looks like I only got about halfway through reading it. That's awesome. That would be fantastic. That would be a nice boost, and would work in tandem well with this module. Okay, the next two issues, block copy and region copy. Dr. Wilmot has also made pull requests for both of these issues. They're basically two different issues aimed at solving the same problem, that you can end up with a lot of blocks with a lot of different configurations, and that needing to go in and edit every block on your entire website, for example, to change the menu settings to include a dropdown or not, is tedious. And so there's two different suggestions on how we could ease that problem. And I had been thinking that there would be one or the other, but it looks like Dr. Coleman is making the suggestion possibly of doing both. So the first one, block copy, is at 2245. That issue needs review. I'm actually in the middle of reviewing that one as well. I'm kind of curious about that particular approach. My thought had been that we would make like a reusable block that would be like a section that was like, these are blocks that are being reused. But this approach thus far is more direct in that it just allows you to copy in one layout the configuration of a block from any other layout. And so there's not like a master copy of the block somewhere. It's just literally any arbitrary layout can borrow any other arbitrary layout's block settings, which I think actually is more direct and would probably be easier for people to understand, but it might also be maybe a little bit sloppier from a site structure and site building standpoint. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, you know. Sometimes things that are looser and easier can be better than things that are harder and more structured. So some trade-off there that I think would be valuable for us to discuss as to what approach is preferable there. One nice thing about this pull request as it is right now is it's ridiculously simple. It's just adding one additional block class, and that's just about it. It's only about 150 lines of code. So take a look at that one, 2245. That one needs review and feedback. The code itself is really pretty solid, but talking about the actual approach, I think, would be really valuable. The next one is copying an entire region, which is issue 1886. And I haven't had a chance to look at the way this one is implemented, but I'm guessing it might be kind of similar.
It is. I looked at that this morning. It's actually kind of interesting. What it does, it also adds a new block class, and the block class lets you choose any region in any other layout, just like the block one lets you copy any block in any other layout. But then when it renders it, it renders a block with a region with all the blocks. So you end up with like a vastly different output than I think what people would expect, which is just all the blocks in the region they defined. So I added a comment on the pull request that was like, can we find a way, rather than having this block print a block, have this block change the way the layout renders so that it will retrieve data from another layout and render the blocks the same way the other layout rendered them, which is going to be really complicated to build, but I think it'll make a lot more sense to users in terms of what they get.
Okay.
And the big problem there, I think, is that we want to make sure that when somebody adds another block to a region in the parent area, that block appears on the layout that they copied the region from. And so we can't just copy the blocks. We have to actually retrieve the data from the parent layout and render them.
And well, we would also need to somehow, you're saying even in the admin UI.
When the admin UI would
individual
say,
blocks.
this block, this copies another region. Like there wouldn't be any indication of what's in there.
So it still would be represented as a single block in the admin
On the admin UI it would be, but on the front end it wouldn't be. So it's kind of a mess. Like theoretically it's a mess. I don't even know what that code would look like. But that was my recommendation anyway.
Yeah. I'm concerned about both of these issues in that, like, we may be able to get some, useful functionality by doing the easiest to implement approach, but we may be working ourselves into a corner of like a not very good long-term approach that when we have more time or potentially in Contrib, like a better solution may come along that would, be a kind of situation where it's like, oh, you shouldn't use what's in core because that one sucks. You should use the one that's in Contrib that is much better.
That's okay. We can write another path.
Well, yeah. You get back to me after you write the taxonomy term upgrade path and tell me how easy that actually turned out to be. I think it's more likely that we'll do things like deprecate functionality. You're right that we would still need an upgrade path, but we could deprecate functionality and then remove it in the next, in like Backdrop 2. But yeah. Anyway, I'm even more worried about the region copy than I am the block copy because it's even more kind of I don't know, potential mess happening. Okay, some more discussion on that one is also appreciated, issue 1886. But it's awesome that we have code to actually look at. So yay, fantastic to actually have some progress on there. Even if it's something that we just need to say this approach works, but it's not actually the approach that we want. Like even establishing that is really important. Okay. Jen, could you talk about this next one? Page title and tabs and action links. Oh, okay. I haven't looked at this.
Just add a new block that renders all the stuff that we want to move around in layouts but can't currently, and then change the way layouts work to say, if that block has been rendered, don't print the thing. And I think that we need to do this. I think we need to add one block that prints all the things together, and then we need to add one block for each one individually. And then in Contrib, or anyone who's running a site, if they want to move the page title, they place the page title block. If they want to move all the things, then they place all the things. And then that way we don't have to worry about removing anything that's in the core layouts because they'll be smart enough to not print themselves twice. So in theory, that is possible to get done in time, but we need to have someone start working on it soon or we won't have time. Just because the way it affects the layout. Layouts need to determine if the blocks are there. Writing the blocks will be easy. Determining whether the page titles and messages and stuff prints on the page will be harder.
Yeah, this is actually quite challenging. I would say to do it correctly. So anyway, that is a great issue. 796, but there's currently just an idea phase at this point. So yeah, if someone would like to be champion of that, it's available for the taking. Okay, next one, issue 1448, media/file handling solution.
So
yeah, it looks like not a lot of activity on this one, but the first item that we would like to accomplish in this is simply an interface for listing and managing uploaded files. So basically a view plus a menu callback for managing an individual file. I think even that would be a really good start, with bulk operations, bulk operations use. So that would be a really great start for this issue, and that alone would be, a banner feature for 1.6. So that one's the start of which is not difficult, but we haven't actually had any implementation progress on it at this point. So I think that's a good one to leave on the docket for 1.6 and see if we can make any headway on that before code freeze. Okay. Next issue, and a system of pageless nodes or some kind of entity system that doesn't have paths associated with it. This one, we've talked to ourselves in circles pretty much endlessly, and I think that we are still kind of stuck in the, what is the best solution here?
I mean, recently Jeff said that it might not be that much code to make a pageless node as opposed to entity type without a path. And so I think where we were stuck on this is let's look at the code, as long as we don't think it's going to be so much time to write the code that we would feel sad if we wrote it and it didn't get in. So I think all we are for this one, I don't know, having a month left, it seems like maybe it's not really possible. But if it were possible to do like a, what's that called, rabbit hole style solution where we just did like an access denied and then remove the UI or something, that could happen theoretically. Unless it turns out to be a lot more work than we think it is. So that's still kind of a maybe.
Okay. I'll let you talk about the next one. I'm not sure what's going on in 523.
Well, we don't, that's the thing. We don't really know what's going on there either. We know that menus and breadcrumbs are have been kind of a pain point in Drupal since Drupal 6 when the menu system got reworked. And it would be good if we could find a way to tie them together and make them less confusing and easier for people to follow. I think this issue is going to end up being a meta of some really simple things that we can do right away that will improve the user experience and some really crazy complicated things that are probably going to be API changes. So I think we need to figure out like if moving blocks on the page is a solution, we could probably do that now as part of the solution. But if like doing any change to the menu system is required, that would be much harder. So I think we need some actionable items there to determine which of them can still get into 1.6.
I can't even find an issue in here that's referenced that hasn't already been fixed. Like 529 or 525, 399, 521, all of the sub issues that are referenced in this issue have already been fixed.
Okay. Let's check with Gregory, because I know he still had some strong feelings about menus and breadcrumbs being confusing for people. But if all of the all of the action items we've currently identified might be that we can close that issue, my understanding recently was that there were still some outliers. Like we just haven't figured out what needed to be done about it, which is why there aren't any sub issues.
Yeah, that might be the case, or there might be another issue that was intended to be referenced here rather than this one.
That also could have been it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Next item: configuration storage in the database is issue 2277. This one actually from a technical standpoint looks really pretty solid. Sentai Digital did some work on this back in October, and we had a lot of back and forth back then, but it's been stalled mostly on reviews since then.
Can you do a recap of so my understanding is we don't want to do this, but there's some crazy use case that requires it?
No, there's not a crazy use case that requires it. I think it's more of a, this would be a convenience factor in some situations. Some situations may include Pantheon, for example. That's already on Pantheon. It's the file system itself is kind of in a nebulous thing that is a little bit difficult to get at. And if we moved configuration to the database within Pantheon, it would make downsyncing your environments work directly, because the database and the configuration would all be in the database in the same way that they are in 777 and in 888. But the idea is that we would continue using files as the default storage mechanism. And then for something like Pantheon, that was a hosted service that had interfaces around downsyncing your environments, that a database stored configuration may be more convenient.
Okay, so we already have a solution to the Pantheon config problem that's not putting files in the database. Is there any other use case you can think of where that would be valuable?
Yeah,
like
and then
not an infrastructure that's not built for like Drupal not handling configuration correctly.
Yeah, it could be useful in any scenario where you have multiple web servers. So basically, so like a hosting solution scenario and a high-end scenario.
Okay. So if that is not the target audience we care about, I think we need to evaluate whether this change is actually any good for Backdrop, or if this is one of those like 1% scenarios. Like I think, and haven't looked at the code, I don't know how it's configured, but if it's like adding a like setting that can be set in settings.php and doesn't affect anyone, then that's not an issue. But if we're like doing like Drupal 8, where it's like put it back in the database because web hosts have built things that aren't meant for us and we want to use them, I don't think that's a valid use case. Or
to be clear, we're not talking about changing the existing sites. We're talking about it being an option in the same way that you could enable a different cache backend, and that the.
But what is the cost of that change is what I'm talking about. Like there's an option to do alternate field storage too, but there was a cost with that. If there's no cost with this, it's not a big deal. But it's not something that applies to our users. So why is it something we should consider for core?
Well, I do think that there would still be some benefit potentially in Pantheon, because it would be more similar to other systems that they're already supporting, and we would have fewer, like if you're using Drupal, do it this way, and if you're using Backdrop, do it this way, discrepancies. So I do think there's some value there, but as for the cost of change, not really much cost, but as for the cost of complexity, because all existing sites would be completely unaffected. They would just continue working, and all new sites would continue installing and using file-based storage exactly as they do today. But as for the complexity issue, I think that's the one area that we should take a look at and see, if in some places we've added the pull request adds like a new function to consistently get what the backend storage is instead of using the file-based one directly, for example. And so I think taking a look at that and saying, is this making the code more difficult to understand in a way that has a substantial cost for Backdrop developers, then that's a question that is valid.
Okay. Well, I haven't looked at the code, so I don't know. It just seemed like a request that was against the best interests of things. But if the code is minimal and the cost of change is minimal, maybe it's okay. But I think it's something we shouldn't rush into. Like, I don't necessarily see a reason to put it into 1.6, especially if it's something where it's like, maybe there are other use cases that could benefit, but we don't have any. It seems a little strange to put it in now.
Oh, here's one more use case. He actually put it right in the summary. I should have mentioned this as well. That his statement is that it makes it easier to capture the entire state of an environment, which I think is probably also true. That it, rather than needing to capture two things, the config files and the database, it's just one thing. And so that also brings it more in line with software like WordPress, where it's like, if you want to replicate a copy of that environment, you dump the database and you take the code. And so it's one fewer piece, basically, in order to get your site from one place to the other.
I don't know. I just feel like the whole reason, like, why even have CMI if you're putting it back in the database? Like, this is a problem we've solved. It's a problem WordPress suffers from. It's a problem Drupal suffers from. And we're like, oh, some people want the problem. Okay, we'll put it back in. I don't know. I mean, I also think we should be doing what our people want. And if everybody's like, we don't care about CMI, we want the problem, then we should do that. It just seems a little weird.
Yeah, that's not a fair statement of it, though, because it still interacts with configuration management. So you still have your staging config, and the import part puts it in the database rather than into an active config.
Yeah, and you're not really supposed to be modifying your active config files directly anyway. What files gets us is it really gets us version control management of our config in an easy to acquire fashion, basically. But it doesn't even eliminate it entirely. You can still export your config and then put that into version control. And how the active directory is stored, isn't relevant in a lot of situations.
All right. I mean, I haven't looked at it. I'll read the issue. I want to read the use cases and see what's going on. But it just seems like I don't think we should rush into something like this. And I think having it on, I wonder what why is this slated for 1.6?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Put it to 1x and give us time to parse it along with all the other things that we have to parse that we know are going into 1.6.
Yeah, it's not, at this point, I wouldn't consider it rushed. It's been in discussion since October. So yeah, but having more discussion there was great.
Had a release since then.
That's true. Anyway, it's no more rush than many of these other items.
Well, some of them are things that will benefit existing users, right? Most of them.
You mean that they're end user features?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or existing sites will benefit. But if this has no change to any site that's existing, or I don't know.
Anyway, I would suggest, post feedback there about your skepticism, because right now the developer, may not be watching these meetings, and he doesn't know that there's any skepticism around this at all.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Okay. The last item is rich text editors, a meta issue that has been open for quite a while at 1087. This is an ongoing issue with a whole bunch of changes that we could potentially do to improve the experience of the rich text editor. I am not certain if there are any of these sub-issues. There's about 20 issues listed, and 10 of them have been fixed since this issue was originally open. I'm not sure that that any of these have seen progress. It doesn't look like it. So again, I guess a call out is always anyone that is interested in being champion of the CK editor, improving the rich text editor experience. Issue 1087 is a great place to start because it has a whole bunch of ideas that are pending of things that we would like to improve about the rich text editor experience. There's also other issues that are tagged for 1.6. You can find all of them in the GitHub issue tracker under the 1.6 milestone. All right. I think that's it for the 1.6 release. Gregory normally now does the community growth section, but it looks like he had to hop off. So unfortunately, I don't think that we have the numbers to do that section. So maybe we'll just carry on.
I think we should at least welcome our new Kindred maintainer.
Oh, welcome, Alex Finnaarm. It's great to have you. Yay.
So Alex did the original port of the XML sitemap module like a year ago. And that was something I needed on one of my sites this week. And so I started to port it. And I was like, wait a minute, there's one that's already here. Like I found an issue in the queue on Drupal.org that was like, I just ported this module. And I'm like, what? And so I went and found it and was like, this is amazing. And so I asked if it would be okay if we made that the official version and encouraged him to apply. And he's been really great about reviewing my pull requests and collaborating. And I'm really excited to be working with him on Backdrop stuff. So it's exciting.
Excellent. Yeah, actually, I recognize Alex's avatar here. Yeah, he's been around for a long time, but I guess he just now has joined the Contrib group.
2 years ago, he helped me with Backdrop stuff at DrupalCamp PA. That's good people.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, excellent. Well, welcome, Alex. It's good to have you in the Contrib group. All right, Jen, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. So there's not a lot left. There aren't any upcoming events anytime soon, but we've got 2 in February: the Developer Conference in Panama and the Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit. And then I actually had a question. If anyone has anything they want to share Backdrop related, we need a blog post. So I don't know if there's anything cool you're working on or fun things you've been wanting to share with people. Don't know. But it's been a while since we've had one. I think the last blog post was about BADCamp. So getting something else on the blog would be great. If anyone has any ideas, let us know. Maybe we could get, yeah, I don't know. We've got a lot of stuff going on. Seems like we should come up with something, but feel free to blog. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about this week?
There's a PR I just put in chat that I just modified a couple things from Jen's pull request for the hero, a full bleed hero. So I think it's ready to go.
Cool. Anything else? All right. Is there anything in particular we want to talk about next week? Should we change the agenda to reflect anything, any particular focus? Yeah. Okay. Carry on. Unless, Nate, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I just wanted to affirm that I think our agenda is good.
Okay.
Yeah, we did trim down the 1.6 a little bit this week and may continue to do so as the 1.6 release comes into focus. It has been great to see development progress on a lot of these items, however, so yay, carry on, sally forth.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then we'll wrap this up and we'll see you guys next week.
Okay. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for joining.